the other aspects, whatever is being left out. So today we are going to continue from that. So we are discussing about what is exactly the qualitative research. Then we are discussing about the how ethnography methods helps in qualitative research, and I was telling about ethnography is not a particular method, rather it is a family of approach which helps in the collecting the very intensive and descriptive information from the field. So let's look into the ethnography is an open-ended emergent learning process and not a rigid investigator controlled experiment. Because you see, in ethnographic research, here we are not going to the field with a mostly kind of rigid kind of structure by using what we collect the information. Rather, what we are using in the ethnographic research mostly it is an open-ended discussion. It is an open-ended, unstructured questionnaire we are using or the checklist we are using, and we are having an open-ended discussion with the respondents, and from that we are collecting the information. And if you look at the ethnographic research, the design of in the ethnographic research actually is more flexible, and it is a kind of creative in the process. Means it is highly flexible, and always every time the researcher may use any very kind of innovative and creative ideas in collecting the information. It is an interpretive, reflexive, and constructive process. You see, it reflects what exactly happening in the field. We are trying to look at those aspects. It is a reflection of what exactly happening in the ground reality. We are trying to reflect on that, and it is interpretive. Means if you are seeing something in the field, we are not collecting the information as it is. Rather, we are going for a more kind of interpretation. We are trying to grasp more and more in-depth information relating to that. I have given an example earlier, and if we found that somebody is having a conflict in sharing the water in the agricultural land, what exactly we are doing there? We are mostly trying to look at that. It is not that they are having a conflict due to the water sharing. Or might be they have a conflict relating to other activities which is reflected at present. So the what I'm telling you, so means we are in the specifically in ethnographic research, we are doing the interpretation in a very flexible way, and we are going for more in depth while doing the interpretation. It requires the daily and continuous recording of field notes that I was telling last time also. Means we have to do the field notes in a very precise and a very proper way. We have to write the field notes, because generally in ethnographic research, the field notes helps a lot. So what I'm telling, even for you people also, whenever you are going for a field, at least for a little longer period, even if you are going for a short period in collecting the information also, and just filling up the question and all. So please you write the field notes every day night while you will back from the field, you write the field notes, because that field notes will help you while you will go for analyzing the reports. Because while you will write the report and analyze the data, because generally what happens, we see so many things in the field, but we used to forget, because it is very difficult to remember all the things which we see in the field. So that's why it will help you. It presents the world of its host population in a human context of thickly described case studies. It presents the world of its host population in the human context of thickly described case studies. Means what exactly it is doing? The host population on which we are doing the research, it will give a very thickly description through different kind of case studies. We describe the population in a very descriptive way. Then you see, ethnography is a description. So you see, generally what we do in ethnographic research, we are doing a very descriptive research. I have told you the design, mostly we take here descriptive research design. What we are writing? We are writing in a very extensive way. We are giving a clear description about what exactly happening in the field, what is exactly the motto and all these things. So we write in a very descriptive way, which will help any researcher to do the research. Suppose somebody is doing a research on art, the tribal art, or the folk culture, folk art. Here we use ethnographic research because suppose we went to the field and we just want to get the entire information that about the folk culture, the folk art of a community. So there, what exactly we'll do? We'll go for a very in-depth kind of analysis, and we'll go for a very in-depth kind of interaction, in-depth kind of interview with the community, and we can find out some of the peoples who are more engaged in this kind of traditional art, traditional musics and all. What we can do, we can have a very lengthy discussion with them, and from which we can, by using certain case study method, we can collect the entire information that what was the process of evolution of this music, since how many generations this people of this particular community are using this art or the music or the specifically relating to the particular culture. So since how many generations they're using, and what is the process of transformation of this knowledge from one generation to another generation, and then we are going for an in-depth analysis that what is the impact of this modern kind of modernity, means the modern music system, the modern culture, the modern art system on this traditional art and traditional music system, and to what extent the present community are able to cope with the changing environment. Are they still trying to preserve the traditional one, or they have migrated themselves to the modernity? That exactly we are trying to discuss. It must represent its host culture or the society with clarity and faithfulness. It is an ethnographic product is used to support a theory or plan for intervention. Then description must closely resembles the original cultural and social reality. What I'm telling exactly here. So it is look into that whenever we are doing any ethnographic research, what usually we do, either we do something which supports the theory, or we give certain kind of research output which helps in making a proper plan for the intervention. I was giving an example from the very beginning that when I was giving an example that suppose there is a community in the African society. Mostly, those communities, what exactly they do? They used to use the traditional chula for cooking. But the government, what they did, they tried to implement the gobar gas plants in every households because they were having the livestock. And the intention was that if they will implement the gobar gas plants, the people's dependence on forest will go down, so that the climates can be preserved, so that the forest can be conserved, and at the same time, it will reduce the smoke and all at the home, for which mostly the women are suffering from the eye diseases. So looking into all these methods, the government introduced this gobar glass plants and distributed to all the households. But in the reality, what exactly happened? After 1 and 2 years, when they went for a midterm evaluation, what they found? They found that most of the households, almost most of the households, are not using the same gobar glass plants. They're still using the traditional chula. Then the researcher asked, they did an ethnographic research, then they discussed that what exactly the major problem for which you are not using this, and though the government has spent huge money. So from that it was found that because almost all the households usually living in a thatched house because their economic condition is very poor, and what they found, because of this traditional chula, the moment the smoke is being generated, it brings a layer in the below the thatched house. Through that, what will happen? The moment a layer is being, the black layer due to smoke is being prepared, it helps in preserving the bamboo and the straws from the turmeric. From termites, it will save. And otherwise, what will happen if there is no smoke and if that layer is not being created, then there is a high chance that the termite will destroy this bamboo and straw very frequently. So every year they have to spend huge money for the rebuilding these houses. So that's why they lost their interest. And then another example I was already given, which we found that through that the ethnographic researcher gave this, that your plan is something wrong. You have to go for a different kind of plan for the, if you want to make these people be less dependent on forest and to keep them healthy. Then the second example which I had given earlier also, that the government of Odisha way back in the 70s started distributing the cows among the Kond communities, thinking that to diversify their livelihoods through that their dependence on forest will go down, and they can with the use of livestock, then they can go for alternative livelihood and generate more economy from that, more money, and because that will diversify their livelihoods. But after 1-2 years, when they went for midterm evaluation, they found that almost all the corn households, either they have sold it out, the cows, or they have sacrificed at the various festivals, or they have eaten it. So that means the thrust that the cow is being distributed among the corn communities for uplifting the livelihood opportunity is not being realized, because the Koons in that area, it was found that by culturally the Koons never drinks the milks. They usually feel that the calf is having the rights over the milk only. Means the children are having only rights over the cow milks. Means the calf is having only right over the cow milks. Means the child has only right over the mother's milk there. So with that philosophy, they never allow anybody to take the milk out from the cow. So that means let the calf to take entire the milk and survive. So as the entire, mostly the Koons are staying around 90% population are Koons in that region. So nobody will drink cow milks. So then whom they will sell also. So in that sense, what they did, because they either sold it out to non-Koons or they sacrifice, because they usually have a culture of sacrificing the different animals at the time of different festivals, and they are the cow eaters also, so they sacrifice and consumed it. So what I'm telling you, see, if an ethnographic research could have done from the cultural perspective, then understanding their culture in a very holistic perspective could have helped the government before making any plan, before going for any intervention. It could have helped, but we didn't do that. So for which the project is being got failure. This resemblance must be good enough that the natives are able to recognize in its familiar feature of their own culture or society. So what exactly will happen? So whenever we go for a very ethnographic research, very intensive kind of research through ethnographic methods, so we'll find that there are lots of similarity we can find between our society and culture within the society or culture we study. So that it will be also easier for us to go over more kind of in-depth analysis. This is what we call illuminating the internal view. Means it will help us in extracting the internal view from the peoples. This view is never presented in pure form. Even the natives might find such Riya's doll. So what exactly I'm telling you? So means almost it will go to a particular society, and you will find that they generally whenever we go to some other society, make a kind of very internal in-depth kind of study we do through using the ethnographic research. It helps in understanding our own society also, because if I see something which is happening in other society, then it will give me a scope, it will give me a kind of space to think about my own society. Then I can compare it. Is it happening in my society? Suppose if I found that some kind of rituals they celebrate at the time of death and all. You see, I have seen in the specifically in the Saura communities, they have a culture of. I always tell that in the Sauras have a very good culture of drinking. It is. I never tell that they consume the alcohol. Rather, I always tell it is a culture of drinking for for them. So what exactly happened whenever they have a, because that is I'm not going in detail. They have a culture that whenever somebody died at home, so before taking the dead body to the cremation ground, so they used to collect the local wine from somewhere, and the people who will carry this dead body and the people who will go to the cremation ground, immediately before carrying this dead body used to be served with the local wines. So everybody takes some local wines, then they take the dead body. That is exactly their culture. That is their culture, and it is not that exactly, because I am not going in details, because that is linked to the Jagannath culture and how, because generally we have a kind of traditional Puranic belief that the Lord Jagannath is the Lord, was the Lord of Swaraj, then which was being taken by the king, Puri king, to the Puri, and for which the Sora king, Sora chief, this was highly annoyed and all. So I'm not going in detail into that, because there are lots of cultural description within that. So what I'm telling, it rather the internal view must be informed by the internal diversity and by the stereo vision of the ethnographer. So the moment the ethnographer will go and make a very in-depth analysis, lots of internal view will come up, and when we'll go for an internal view also, we'll find that there are lots of internal diversity also there, because it is not that when somebody informed us, they informed the totality. Rather, we find that sometimes some kind of divergence will come in the view given by the community. So this binocular depth perception uh, derives from the living, conversing, observing, and writing in the interface between the native culture and society and the culture of the user of the ethnographic product. So what I'm telling you, see, the moment we go for means why I'm telling the binocular depth here. Means the question is, means why we use binoculars? To look the things from the means things from the very distance looked very close to us. Right? So using the binocular, we can see the things from the very distance place. So that's why I'm telling that as an ethnographer, it uses the binocular approach where they perceive the things from a very close perspective while conversing with the peoples, while doing conversation with the peoples, while interacting with the people, while observing the peoples, and while writing the information collection from the field in the interface between the native culture and society and the culture of the users of the ethnographic product. What exactly here is doing? So means when we are dealing with the local peoples, while we are observing them, while we are interacting with them, while we are conversing with them, while we are reading the lots of writings about them, while we are writing about them, we had lots of confrontation with the public, and from which we try to see the things from a very close distance, even though I am not part of that society. Even though I am using a binocular kind of things to look into that society, means have gone to that society. I'm staying with them. I'm very closely observing them. So that helps me in collecting a very in-depth analysis information about that society. Here you see, the ideal ethnographer studies another culture by bringing the external and internal diversity to bear upon an ethnographic problem. See, generally, a person who do the ethnographic research mostly loves to do the ethnographic research in other communities. So that what will happen? While they will study the society of other society by bringing both the external, means I as an external person to that, and interacting with the peoples as an internal community members, with having a lots of diversity in their opinions, and we have a different kind of description on that. In the quest for the fidelity in describing the native's view, the ethnographer must address three problems here. One is reduction of ethnocentrism. What exactly happened? The uh, see, while I'm looking into the describing the natives' view, while I'm looking into the how the natives looks the things from very from their own perspective or the perspective of the whole, because different people will have a different kind of perception. So here, while I'm looking into this, I am looking into this reduction of ethnocentrism. So means I will try that while interacting with them, I will try to look into that how the people of a particular society usually they develop ethnocentrism, means my culture is the great, my language is the great, my society is the great, means ethnocentrism means feeling of the greatness towards their own culture, one society and one language, whatever. Means I will always tell that suppose I belongs to the part of Odisha, I'll tell that one Odisha food is best, Odisha culture is the best. Look into this. So what I'm telling, so here the ethnographer has to try to reduce the ethnocentrism within the respondents, because if the respondents will be also highly biased and highly develop a sense of ethnocentrism, so then the data may be something not that much good data we will be able to collect. So that's why, as an ethnographer, I should try to reduce this ethnocentrism among the my respondents, so that my respondents will have a less sense of ethnocentrism. Then the reduction of semantic accent. See here, the semantic accent is mostly used in the linguistic, and the people, the students from the linguistic and language background, they know very well. So means here, so the language diversification and language interpretation, because some kind of words we may have a different kind of interpretation, and using binary language and all, so that should be taken care. Means I should, as an ethnographer, I should be very much careful about the language I am using, and the language the natives are telling, and the language which I'm translating, because somebody told in some their native language, but if my translation is wrong, then the entire problem will come. So that's why I should be very much careful with reduction of semantic accent. So ethnocence methodology is the best suited to detecting the semantic accent, because it concentrates on the meaning in the language natives use to talk about their experience. So it means ethnocence methodology. This is another methodology which we can talk about later on. So it means here we are studying the human society from a very holistic perspective while using the ethnoscience methodology. While we are using here, what exactly we are doing in ethnoscience methodology? Generally, it is an attempt to reconstitute what serves as a science for others, and their practice of looking after themselves and their bodies, their botanical knowledge. So generally in ethnoscience, what we look at how the people are looking the things from their own perspective, and looking the things from a very scientific way, means how people look at things, means how they perceive, how the peoples perceive their worldview, their own perception to their own perception to their own society and own language, and the meaning they are using for the same purpose. Means you see, sometimes what happen, people use different kind of terminology. Suppose you went to a particular society and make a study, and generally I have lots of kind of experience while working in different states, and among the specifically in different communities, we found that the similar kind of word they use, which is having a different meaning for in your society, but having also different meaning for another society. So you might be thinking that you are using this terminology for a different purpose, but the real meaning is something different. So that's why in ethnoscience methodology, we try to understand their language from their perspective, and we try to understand the meaning of that language, because whenever we are using some terminology and all, and even if whenever they are telling something, I should be very much, as an ethnographer doing an ethnographic research, I should be very much careful about that what exactly the meaning of that language they are using, because unless and until I understand the meaning of that language, so I cannot understand. Correct? Because we have seen that because generally, actually, what happened, if you look at the cultural diffusionism, when one culture comes in contact with another culture. So even I have my own experience of with my own children. So when they mingle with the other community and having the other language, they picked up their language and use their terminology while they're having an interaction within us, even inside the house. So sometimes we'll be confused. What exactly here she's telling? So, but they're using the terminology of other culture, other regions, and other groups, but we have to understand exactly what they're telling. So that means it is an ethnoscience methodology overcome from all these problems. The discrepancies between the native meanings and the ethnographer's meaning becomes an explicit, especially if the ethnographer submits his or her language to the same cognitive and ethnoscientific analysis. Means here see, through that what will happen, I can I can look into that what exactly the terminology I am using for this and what terminology they are using for that, so that it will be a very clear cut understanding that what purpose they are using. See, um, means sometimes the language makes a very kind of problem for the society, and I'm just making a joke that once when I was in the Meghalaya, one of my friend was telling me when he when he shifted to Assam and all, some parts of Assam, very interior part of Assam, some tribal communities, they use the terminology Kela, their meaning is prostitutes. So the Kela meaning the prostitute for them, some of the internal, very some tribal groups in Assam, they use that. And one of my friend was telling that when he landed in the little late night, so by that time most of the shops are being closed and all, so restaurants are being closed. He was new to that. He was looking for some fruits so that he can survive at the night. And then he went there, and he asked somebody that bhaiya kela kahan milega? Means look into, means he was asking about some fruits and the banana, whatever he was telling in Hindi, that kela kahan milega. So then when nobody responded. Then when he asked one two person, then all of a sudden one person give a slap, because from their language it is different, and from his language something different. So the other person took in a different way, and this person has no intention of translating into their language, because he was not aware exactly what it means in their own native language. So that's why the language makes the researcher in a very confusing state. So what I'm telling, so that's why as an ethnographer, you should be very much careful about the language, the semantic language they're using in their day-to-day lives. So the reduction of complexity. So means as an ethnographer, have to try to reduce the complexity in the society, the complexity in the data, the complexity in the description. So the concept serves a dual purpose. Means some kind of things which having a some kind of things you collect which having a dual purpose, you should very much clear and try to reduce the complexity and make it the things whatever you have collected in a more simpler way. We reduce the reality to field notes and see. So means what exactly the things you are collecting, you should write in a very simpler way in the field notes, which will help you. Then we further reduce the field notes to an ethnographic product, usually an article or a monograph. So once what you do, you write everything in the field notes. But while you are writing everything in the field notes, but exactly you are not presenting your field notes, because generally in field notes you write whatever you feel. But while you will write in the form of your ethnographic product, you are not exactly reflecting what is in your field notes. Rather, what you are doing, you are bringing it in an article and monographic form, so that you are using the field notes, and from that field notes you are again extracting the very simpler things, avoiding the complex things, and bringing it in an ethnographic, monograph or an article form, which will be highly readable and which will be easy to understand. Any practically useful description must be less rich than reality. Any practically useful description must be less rich than reality. So means you have to look into the very reality things, and which are very practically useful should be given emphasis. A good ethnography, like a good map, should provide the quick orientation in unfamiliar terrains. So look into, if you are giving a very good ethnographic report, so it is just like a good map. Suppose if I ask that where is the Srinagar located, I have not asked you that that so if I tell you to find out the Srinagar, so you can just look into, if I am giving a very complex map, it will be very difficult to you to find out where the Srinagar find. But if I am giving a very clear cut India maps, with a very clear location, with a clear picture, with a highly visible things, then immediately you can pick up where the Srinagar located. Otherwise, if I give a very complex map, you will start searching where the Srinagar is located. So like that, the good ethnographic reports should be like a good map. So means immediately you can locate. So means if somebody will read the ethnographic report given by you, can have a good understanding and can represent very well. The ethnographies are mirrors of a man, even if the reflection is far from perfect. So even though we always believe that, see, while we are seeing the ourselves in the mirror, so means no doubt the reflection is not the perfect one, which we whenever we saw ourselves in the mirror, we saw our reflection in the mirror. Maybe that reflection is not 100% perfect the way we are really visible. We are in reality the way we are looked by the others. So it may not be exactly the same. But if you look into the ethnographies as a mirror of man, so it is almost ethnography is just mirror of a community, mirror of a society. It reflects about that community and society. So that's why the ethnography should be very clear, which by studying the ethnographics of a particular community, ethnography of a particular society, the people can understand more or less about everything about that society. Ethnography is understood in different ways. It is understood as written report that is based on fieldwork. Because somebody told that I have written an ethnographic report, means either it is based on your field reports or based on your field work, you have written a report. It is regarded as the study of another culture and therefore the study of ethnocentrism. Means you are to avoid the ethnocentrism, you are going and studying the another culture. Sometimes the ethnographic people believe that the study of another culture and therefore the study of ethnocentrism means you are going for studying the another culture. So it is viewed as a description of the exotic ways in which the group of people view themselves, their relationship to others, and the rest of the environment around them. Means it is a kind of exotic way of describing about a particular society. It is the discovery and rediscovery of the ethnocentrism in ourselves and in other that has continued and contributed to the value of anthropology as a separate discipline. Means what exactly in anthropology mostly people use the ethnographic research. So what exactly they are telling, that it is a discovery and rediscovery of ethnocentrism in ourselves. What is telling in ethnographic research, we discover and rediscover the ethnocentrism ideas and the aspects of the peoples. The traditional ethnography consists of participant observation and partly conversation or the interview. So generally in ethnography, we use all these kind of technologies while collecting the views from the peoples. Then how much from participant observation, how much from interviewing cannot be differentiated from earlier ethnographic studies. Means while I am doing an ethnographic research, I cannot tell you that this much data I will collect from participant observation and this much data I will collect from interview. It is not that I have to make a very to do differentiation within this. There is a need to improve this situation. So means I have to improve the situation. It is not that I cannot exactly tell you that what is the percentage I will collect through participant observation, what is the percentage I will collect through interview. So ethnographic studies complement qualitative studies. Generally, if you look in the ethnographic study, it is always a kind of complement. It is not a kind of substitute completely, but it is a complement to the qualitative studies. Most ethnographies combine the procedural and encyclopedic methods. So mostly ethnographic research we are following the combining procedural and encyclopedic methods generally used for collecting the information. And ethnography is always a mixture of observation and conversation with the natives. So when we are using the ethnographic approach in collecting the information, I have already told you it is a mixture of observation and conversation with the natives. By conversation and observing the people, we understand. Problem arises in ethnography when it becomes impossible to tell who observed what or who said what, the native or the ethnographer. Means whether the native is told or the ethnographer has told this. So because in ethnographic research, the ethnographer usually writes the things from the native's perspective. So that's why it is very difficult to differentiate what exactly the native told and what the ethnographer has written. Since the ethnography applies to all the humans, its methodology must be general enough to apply equally to all cultures. The ethnographies are classified into different types of holistic ethnographies, ethnography as a system of rules, ethnography of daily activities. Means we have lots of things we use in the context of ethnographies. Biological ethnography use, called cross-sectional ethnography use, photographic and film ethnography use, and encyclopedic ethnography also use. So these are the overalls about the ethnographic things. And there are lots of books and all. These are the references which I used for a collection on. So anything, anybody has any doubt? Hello.
Sir, ethnocentrism.
Sorry?
Reduction of ethnocentrism. Sir, please tell what is ethnocentrism.
You see, ethnocentrism means, see, feeling your own culture is great. Means this is exactly, means suppose I told, na, suppose I am from Odisha, I will always tell that the culture of my state is great and my language is the great. Means I am having a biasness towards my culture, that means my culture is the great in comparison to the other cultures. Suppose whenever you will come to the campus, suppose anyhow you are from Odisha, but the other people whenever they come and they stay in the hostel, usually the people have problem with the food, and generally specifically when Chaitanya will come, he will have a complaint that South India khana nahi mil raha hai. So you see what exactly I am telling here. We have Chaitanya, nothing to be worried. We have huge South Indian students. So most of the time our hostel food is dominated by South Indian also. So because I was when I was also warden, most of the time students demand, and during my tenure also mess secretary was from Andhra Pradesh. So anyhow, I have the same feelings and experience whenever we are the student of University of Hyderabad. So we Odia people always try to be the mess secretary. The moment we become mess secretary, the Bengali and Odia people enjoy with aloo and all, and always the Telugu and Tamil people, the Kerala people will have a complaint. So what I'm telling you, see, means in a, generally what will happen, we always claim that our food culture, our dress culture, our regional culture, our language is always great. That is called ethnocentrism. And opponent to the ethnocentrism is called cultural relativism. Means suppose I am very neutral and looking the every culture from a very equal perspective. So whenever I look the food, I always feel that okay, every food has its own importance. So and it differs from the region to region. It is not that I should have a bias towards that my food. Rather, I should believe that every food has its own importance, and based on the climatic condition, the food is being evolved. So that's why you see in Odisha we always believe that if we will take the cod at night, we believe that we will suffer from the cold. Generally, we should not take the cod at night. But go to the Andhra Pradesh, you will see that because of they take mostly the spices food, the chili and everything, to avoid the acidity and all. They take cod after having food both in the night and also in the morning. So means whenever we used to go to the Andhra Pradesh and state or Telangana, we usually take also cod at night, but which we don't do in our own state. So there I should not tell that okay, my food culture is the best because cod should be avoided. Why these people are taking cod and all, and our food is very tasty, their food is not tasty, like that. But the ethnocentrism means feeling your own culture is great, and the opponent is cultural relativism. Clear now, Ananya?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything? Padmini madam? Hello. Hello.
Sir, good morning.
Good morning. Madam, okay. You joined the, okay. So Anyhow, so if no question, I'll stop here. Then we'll meet tomorrow morning 8 o'clock. Then. Okay.
Thank you.